Okay, guys, fire away. I'm ready when you are.
All right. Here's Mike Petty.
You've had a couple days to look at film, look at tape. What are your takeaways a couple days later?
Not a lot different than what we talked about after the game. We ran the ball okay, not good enough. Defensively, we had 49 plays and gave up 174 yards, and then we had 6 plays and gave up 210, which is kind of what I thought afterwards, so I was pretty close with my math. We tackled better than we tackled last year early in the season, but not good enough. As I had mentioned, I was pleased with the discipline side of our team, with turnovers, penalties, and such, negative yardage plays. So not far off in the post game.
We're kind of able to diagnose what led to those, 6 or 7 plays those 6 or 7 big plays that you were talking about.
Well, we've got to get it's a simple concept for what we do. Sometimes it's a little confusing public-wise, but our players need to have their eyes in the correct spots. They did a couple things that were really good. That's why I had mentioned I didn't want to go into it too much without watching. They did a couple things scheme-wise that were really good. So 4 of the 6 we have to be more disciplined with our eyes, and the other couple we need to adjust to what they did to us, and that's going to happen. I mean, the other team, their coaches get a chance to coach, the players get a chance to play. So, but the majority of it is we got to have our eyes in the right location.
Going back to your run game, obviously moving ahead into this week, you look at Arkansas, and their defensive line might be the strength of that team in general.
I mentioned this to you guys in the summer and then out there in Vegas, and again, somebody brought it up preseason that when you play a team in the SEC, you're going to play girth. You're going to play massive guys that have a lot of size and they're physical in the box. And, they have a really good geographical location for producing bigger type bodies like that. And so that's where I mentioned that we need to make good strides between last week and this week in order to block a completely different front than what we saw last week.
What did you think of their front, though? I mean, looking back on it, I thought the defensive tackle and that linebacker, 32 especially, were pretty good players.
They had, in my opinion, just being fair, they had 4 guys I thought on defense that can play in this league. I don't get paid to evaluate players from other teams, but I'm just saying when I looked at it, that's what I thought. They haven't gotten to the point to where they are by not having good players, good concepts. And the difference with the team we played and the team we're playing now is the girth and the mass of what you're going to face up front. That's the difference. From a technique standpoint, from a concept and fundamental standpoint, the team we just played was excellent. They didn't have as much size as what we'll face Saturday.
So how did you feel about your offensive line after you looked at it?
I thought they played good because, they didn't give up any sacks. Bowman did a better job in this game of sitting in the pocket and not running out for no reason at all, which is what we have asked him to do and worked with him on that. We only had maybe 1 or 2 negative yardage plays. I think we lost 3 on one play and 1 or 2 on another. So you always have to take that into consideration. That's a big part of it. Okay, sacks and negative yardage plays, a big part of the game. We have to get better and continue to work to improve in some things in the running game that will help us. And the things that we need to improve on this week are things that we've done and improved on in the past.
You mentioned Allen a little bit right there, but after going back and watching, what you kind of think of this game overall?
Thought he played very well for what we ask our quarterbacks to do in this system. And the improvement that you guys see, which I'm guessing from what he did in this game compared to the majority of the games he did last year, was good. And he distributed the ball in a manner that we asked him to in our system, and he did a nice job of sitting in the pocket and relaxing and making some throws after he had really good protection.
Mike, Sam Pittman grew up in Grove, has been coaching for a long time in a lot of places. Have you crossed paths with him at any
Not
point
a
over the
lot.
years?
He's been at Oklahoma, but I think when he was at Oklahoma, I was at Maryland or something. I can't remember. I had seen him before, know people that know him more so than me. He's a lot older than me. I say that jokingly, but people that I know that know him speak very highly of him as a person and a football coach. And so I've just been more aware of him and not really known him. So he must be out there right now. I told Kenzie and Ginger to bark if they saw Coach Pittman or Coach Petrino. And so.
I know we kind of asked you about this after the game the other night, but just kind of renewing this series that has some historical roots and a bunch of people in the area excited for this game. What are your thoughts on it?
I think the series is good for the reasons you were there the other night, right? The other day, other night, whatever. But because you're going to want to play quality non-conference schedules now, so the committee will have respect for that. And this is a good matchup because it's 2 hours and 45 minutes away, and you have a lot of crossover with people, right? There's a lot of Arkansas people that can live over here, and there's a lot of Oklahoma people that have migrated over there with Walmart and all that stuff. So I think it's good.
Is that about as good a first game from a penalty standpoint as you've had maybe in a long time?
I think so.
One defensive
Yeah.
holding.
We played with discipline, and it's interesting that the first scrimmage and the second scrimmage we had in August, that was a concern of mine. I thought we had way too many penalties, and then we must have done a good job of instilling the discipline with our players, because in that game we played really well in those areas, that hidden yard area, which would be your special teams production and your penalties.
Talk about Trey Rucker too, because what he did just coming up in run support, the gap control was pretty good up front. He was just able to come up there and see ball, get ball, and make tackles.
Trey loves to play football. He always has. He's reckless and will totally disregard his body to play the game, which is what you have to do to be competitive at this level. And he likes football. Trey's a guy that play forever if you'd let him. And he's a quiet leader. He's not vocal, but players do enjoy watching him, and it's valuable to have a player like him on your team because he's relentless, and he'll compete from start to finish.
There's been a thought during the preseason that you guys might try to redshirt Gavin Freeman. I know he played a lot, and you can still can, but where do you stand on that? Are you going to need to use him as a number 2 slot?
Because of the 4 games and the postseason opportunities, I don't know that it's fair to say one way or the other right now. I will say that we're very pleased with what he's bringing to the table. He still has a ways to go learning our system, but he's made really good strides, and we'll just have to play it by ear as we move along.
What is he just came in from fall camp, wasn't even here in the spring. What has he done so well to get on the field as early as he has?
Well, he's fast and he's tough. He's has always had success with the ball in his hands. He disregards his body at wide receiver. He takes hits all the time. He tries to hurdle people. He runs through people. He's a returner. He wrestled for 10 years. He just has a toughness about him, a competitive nature that you want guys like that on your team.
As a high schooler, he was pretty under the radar. What do you kind of remember about him?
Well, he really wasn't under the radar, and I can't remember exactly the players that we took in that class. We watched him and liked him and watched him, and Gage, actually, my youngest, told me that year, you guys are making a mistake not taking him. He'd cross paths with him in summer 7-on-7 and all that stuff, but we had a reason for not. I think we were in a year that we didn't take a bunch, but we certainly were aware that he was good enough to play at this level.
Leslie O'Neill goes into the Ring of Honor. Is that you would have been? You came in a year after he finished, right?
Oh, maybe a couple. I don't know what Leslie's last year. I know Leslie was here in '84, and I came in '86, but really close. And it's interesting. Our former players, we talk so much about Barry and Thurman, and because of the offensive position, but as far as like former players that were dominant here, I mean, he was as dominant defensively as Barry and Thurman were offensively. It's just not a position that people talk about a lot. But, I mean, a great player. Very moderately recruited is what I was told, from Arkansas. And just a great player and had, I don't know how many years in the NFL, 12? Yeah, I mean, playing in the position he plays and to be double-digit years in the NFL is tough. But just a great player.
How do you look at the concept of redshirting? Like, is that something you think about week to week, or do you, I don't know, how do you sort of evaluate if a guy, once you've got a couple games, should we play him and then he can't redshirt? How do you look at that?
So you always, first and foremost, want to do what you think is best for the young man and what he wants to do. Now, those two don't always jive together. Okay, if they did, then we wouldn't have the questions that you're asking right now. And so, second, we ask and think what's best for the team. Years ago, coaches made that determination. Over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, there's a mutual conversation between the player, their family, their representatives, and the coaches as you move forward. It's just one of the changes that we're going through that's part of the game. I guess ultimately a coach could just say, this is what you're doing one way or the other. That's not what we do here, because I think long term it'll be counterproductive in a free agency world.
Last year with Leon, right? I mean, y'all are trying to have him again this year, but because of injuries.
We tried to redshirt him.
Yeah.
Had injuries. So Leon is his perfect example. We'd love to have him back. But at that point, we were on a run and had a chance to get in the Big 12 championship game, and we would not have gotten in it without him. But he also had to make a commitment to a team. We talked to him. We had the discussion. At first, I think he still wanted a red shirt, and then he finally said, okay, I'll play. And we wouldn't have gotten in that game without him. You guys know in the last 2 or 3 games, he had a couple big games, made big plays. So that was a difficult one because we started him to redshirt because making the jump from where he was to our level was huge. And he wasn't ready up through the middle of October. And then all of a sudden he continued to get better and better, and we had injuries and we needed him.
Where do you typically see the most growth from week 1 to week 2?
Typically see the most what?
Growth within the team.
Meaning what? Young players? What do you
Just
mean?
collectively.
On this category or with us now? Well, I'm not
Over
sure.
20 years.
Oh.
From week 1 to week 2, typically, where do you see the most growth?
Young players that were out there for the first time. So a couple names would be Sese, the running back, because he played last year some, but not a lot. Those guys will start to get better early in the year. Jeff Roberson, who played a number of snaps that hasn't really played before. That type of player that has a little experience but now is asked to play a bigger role, that's where you'll see the most improvement.
Jaleel in that category.
Jaleel should start to really get better over the next few weeks.
Another dual threat quarterback this week. How do y'all approach him? Just the defensive line play, and just
You gotta have a guy for him. And when you are competing against a guy that has the ability to run, you have to take that into account in your structure of defense and the style of play. So we have plenty of ways to do that because we see them quite a bit now. It's just a matter of being disciplined, make sure somebody has responsibility for the quarterback.
They didn't show much. It looked pretty vanilla, but he jumps off the page.
Sure,
Green
running
does.
back. And they've got, I mean, he's a guy that can make plays. This is I've scanned through them over the summer, and they had 4 or 5 games they played last year that they could have won. So I don't know what their record was last year, but they could have, it looked like to me, they could have won 8 games pretty easy in obviously a very difficult conference. And they played against good teams and lost single-digit points late in the fourth quarter. So this team that we're playing Saturday, regardless of what anybody in the country may think, will be as talented as anybody we play all year, in my opinion.
Petrino, I kind of read his manifesto the other day. He put something out. I forget the name of it, but his theory is feed the studs. FTS is what he goes by, but doesn't he kind of do the same thing, whether it was at A&M or Missouri State? He has a system.
Right, he's got a system he believes in. I think from a distance, and cross paths with him some, and then seen crossover tape on him for years. He's got a system, and he's going to stay in, and then he's going to vary it a little bit based on what the strengths are of his skill players, which is what he's referring to, would be my guess. So a comparison would be like what we've done here the last 15 years on offense. We don't get away from our core system in what we do on offense, but it varies based on who our quarterback is, what kind of a threat we have outside, and what our running back is. So we look a little different now than we did when Mason Rudolph was playing here. And that was because of Mason and the skill we had on the perimeter compared to, what we've had with Ollie right now. So I would say that would be a pretty good illustration of what his system is, in my opinion. I could be way off, and what he's trying to get accomplished.
Have you and your staff talked yet about pros and cons from Saturday as far as the in-helmet communication, having the tablets on the sidelines, what worked, what didn't work?
Yeah, we had that discussion yesterday, and it was all pretty smooth. And I'll be honest with you, much smoother than what I thought it would be with all the new technology during the game with so many other things going on. The newness of it was a real concern of mine, and it actually still is now. But we didn't have many glitches, and I was pleased with the way that it came through on the first game.
Could that be an advantage, especially the first couple games, maybe staffs that pick up and have a better system for how to incorporate all that, and while others maybe struggle?
Yeah, we think that what we're doing gives us an advantage, but maybe somebody else is doing something better. But we've had long discussions about it for months, and so we had a plan going in. There's not a lot we felt like we want to change. There's a couple things that we would alter a little bit for this next game, but we think that we have a productive way of using it and facilitating it to the best that we can for our players.
Coach, the thing that surprised me the most, getting to see it down there, Joe Bob and Timurtay, some of the coaches always had one when their guys were over there. But there were a lot of times I looked over and it was just players with a pad together. That kind of goes, you've talked about, and I know it's that way in my house. Younger people are better at that stuff than.
Yeah, were you able to go look and see if they were watching YouTube or actually watching
They were watching plays from the last
Nowadays,
series.
these kids, they probably try to pull YouTube up and watch some goofy video. Smart players will go back and continue to watch the game. It's like taking a cheat sheet into a test. So you can go and look and see what all the answers are, and then go back out and play. Just like I had a couple teachers in high school that had a really good approach in teaching. They said, here's the material that I want you to learn over the next 2 weeks. I'm gonna lecture on this, and I'm gonna give you the material with the answers, and then we're gonna have a test two weeks from now on Friday. And that's probably the best teaching procedure there is, in my opinion, because whatever material he wanted us to learn, he gave us the answers. So who cares? So he lectured on it, gave us the answers, you studied it, you paid attention, you made an A. If you didn't, you made whatever was accordingly, and in the end, you learned the information that he wanted you. every 2 weeks. Well, that's what those tablets do. The information's right there in the tablet. So you can look at it and get it. It's a cheat sheet to go back out, or you can not look at it, not absorb the information, and go out and figure it out on your own.
Based on proximity, you and Arkansas recruit a lot of the same guys. Does this game mean anything in terms of recruiting? Give any edge?
The business side of what we're getting into, I don't know anymore. I think the business side, based on the same thing we talk about over and over, if she signs off on what we think she's going to sign off on, recruiting will be limited, negotiating will be prominent.
We talked a lot about Colin Oliver the other day after the game. What did you think specifically of how Kendall handled it? And are there things that, because of, playing a safety in the past, are there things that maybe he can do that he's better at than a typical linebacker in that role?
So Colin was excellent because he was playing a lot of the same location he did earlier in his career. So, like, based on what they were doing and where he was located, that wasn't anything new to him. Kendall was good, but has a lot of room for improvement because he's in an area that he's not as frequent with, or he hadn't been as much. And he should get better each week. Colin has had a lot of reps in the world he played in last Saturday.
Are there things, skill sets he maybe brings from his previous positions that could maybe help him excel in ways that maybe guys who've always played linebacker can't?
So with Kendall, you talking about? Yeah, so his ability to affect the throwing game in some type of zone responsibilities or a pass coverage should be better than most of those guys because he lived in that world for a couple years.
You guys were able to sub defensively in between plays quite a bit the other day, and I know that's probably what you want to be able to do, but was some of that because they were huddling and taking some time that allowed you to do that more than you probably might be able to against Big 12 teams?
Yeah. It was more based on they're not a tempo team, and they don't – in a 2-minute offense, for this league, they're moderately speed even in a 2-minute offense. So there's a lot more substitution opportunities.
Is it fair to say it's easier for your team to go fast than it is to slow things down when they need to, just because, like you said the other night, we had a multiple score lead. We didn't want to go fast, but
Yeah.
they're better going fast than mediocre?
It's it's interesting. Over the years, we've done it so many different ways, but if you lean toward being a tempo team, you're good at what you practice, and then you try to present a slower system. Almost mentally, you struggle a little bit. You become sluggish. The defense forced them into stops on fourth down. And offensively, we lined up in places we should have scored touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and we were sluggish and there was nothing to us. If you do it all over again, you probably just go out and just go, just to maybe keep that tempo. That was the one thing with the game that I wasn't pleased with, the finish offensively in the fourth quarter. Good. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.